failed on that second circuit, it triggered a shutdown of power to the system so that we didn't lose all of the circuits, and that's what you saw occur today. The PLD system, as you probably know, is citywide. It consists of 27 circuits. It serves nearly all of the Detroit Public Schools. It serves Wayne State University. It serves the firehouses and the police stations. It serves City Hall, and it serves a handful of customers like Detroit Receiving Hospital. And so nearly all of these were affected when the PLD system went down. Out of the bankruptcy process, one of the key elements of the plan of adjustment is that the city of Detroit is getting out of the business of running PLD, and it is being taken over by DTE. That transition is a 4-year process. DTE is in the process of building a $200 million system to serve these customers because the DPD system was so far gone it just could not be salvaged. And so we're in the early phases of this 4-year process. There's been an 18-month inspection process of the 27 PLD circuits. I asked DTE, and it was the responsible thing to do, they focused their energies this summer in particular at those circuits that have failed most often. Many of you covered last year multiple closings of public schools that occurred when different substations failed. DTE went in and rebuilt the capacity in the areas that were failing most frequently, and we've had almost no school closings due to power failures this year. The Warren circuit that went today is not one that had experienced a failure before, and so as DTE was going through the inspection process, it was not one that they had gotten to yet, but obviously it'll become a focus of the inspections right now. And over the next 3 to 6 months, I expect that they will complete the inspection process, and we will make an event like today far less likely to occur again, although we will, for another few years, still at least have some risk of this happening. During the course of the day, we did not ever lose power to the 911 dispatch system. That continued to function smoothly throughout the day. And as of 10 minutes ago, a third of the system was back online. Power has been restored to about a third of the customers. DTE is taking the lead now in restoring it to everyone, and we do expect everybody will have power by sometime tonight. I have a number of people that I do want to thank, and then I'm going to let you talk or hear from the individual departments that have been running the operations, but a special thank you to the men and women of the Detroit Fire Department. Some of you saw they carried people down several flights of stairs in the special chairs they have when the power went down in the elevators, and did that in a calm and smooth way. I want to thank Dan Dirks and the folks at DDOT. When the Detroit Public Schools went to close the schools, DDOT took more than 40 buses that normally would not have been put out till 3 in the afternoon, put them out at 11:30 this morning so that we could efficiently move the students who normally would take a bus at 3 or 4. They were able to get out of school, get on a bus, and head home, and we've already gotten a thank you call from the Detroit Public Schools and the coordination on the transportation of the students. And thank you to the Michigan State Police, who teamed up with the men and women of the Detroit Police Department, and we had nearly 100 officers, state and local, at various major intersections directing traffic. Our DPW team had about 40 intersections with 4-way stop signs out, and the public has been extremely cooperative and patient in proceeding through intersections on a 4-way stop. And so we have not seen spikes in police or fire incidents. Power is starting to come back up, and we're going to stay with it until it's done. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to the person who's heading up the response from DTE, and that's Jerry Norcia, the president of DTE Electric. Jerry?
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. Just wanted to confirm that we are working to restore power to all of our customers. At this point in time, we have approximately 1/3 of the power restored to our customers. In the next 2 hours, we expect that 70% of the customers will be restored, and with the balance being restored by the end of the day. We also are working hand in hand with the city to help the city get power restored, and it was caused by 2 cable failures that then eventually led, as the mayor mentioned, to the shutdown of the system, which is it operated as expected, and so we're in the process of restoring. So within 90 minutes of the outage, we were restoring power to all our customers. Thank you.
And the Detroit Police Department, we learned that our backup power system worked reasonably well, and I'll ask Chief Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a great example of teamwork in action, and certainly from policing the city of Detroit, there was no interruption. Certainly our biggest challenge was that all of the stations, except for one, the first precinct, defaulted to generator power. The first precinct decision was quickly made to redeploy those officers into the third precinct. As the mayor pointed out, certainly want to give a hearty thanks to our law enforcement partners, the Michigan State Police, who deployed 18 troopers to the city of Detroit that complemented our 78 Detroit police officers that were deployed throughout the downtown primarily and the 9th precinct. And they were deployed in those areas because those were areas where we experienced our biggest traffic challenge. So half of the troopers were sent to the 9th precinct along the Gratiot corridor, and then the other half remained in the downtown area that was most affected. But again, I do want to thank the Michigan State Police and certainly the men and women of the Detroit Police Department who once again did just an outstanding job. Thank you.
And the Detroit Fire Department, which is, I've learned today, doesn't operate on backup power, but managed to work very smoothly off their radio systems. And we'll ask Fire Commissioner Edsel Jenkins to talk about how DFD has been handling today.
Afternoon. First, I'd like to thank the men and women of Detroit Fire, EMS, and Communications Division for exercising calm and professionalism during this power outage. When the power went out, we lost power to all of our stations. So the men and women of the Detroit Fire Department, along with Communications, they received instructions to move their vehicles outside the quarters. So we're able to respond to every call for help around this city timely without interruption. We had one station, Ladder 25, who could not open their doors, but a fire vehicle located in that same facility was able to cover that area. In addition, Communications Division made sure that any calls for help in that area was responded to promptly if there was a call for help. But once again, I'd like to say thank you to the men and women of the Detroit Fire Department, EMS, Fire, and especially my Communications Division that utilized radio to make sure all fire companies, EMS companies were dispatched timely to all calls of help. Thank you.
And we have up here with us today Gary Brown, who's been overseeing the DPW and the response on the traffic signals and getting them to go from flashing to operating again, which they're working on diligently. Dan Dirks from DDOT, who worked so quickly to get those buses on the street. And with that, I'd like to ask our last speaker to come up, our partner, Council President Brenda Jones.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the men and women who work for the city of Detroit, as well as the citizens. What I would like to say is, don't be in a hurry. As we all know, all of the traffic signals are not working. And during this time of emergency, I would like to ask the citizens to be patient, treat the major intersections like they are a 4-way stop area, watch for the pedestrians. Pedestrians, don't be in a hurry to cross the street. I have been in contact with Detroit Public Schools. All of the Detroit Public Schools were closed and none of the kids were left alone. There were assistants, teachers, and principals that were waiting for the parents or guardian or an adult to be contacted before the kids were released. Buses are running, but with lights out, they may need just a little extra time for loading and unloading. So if anyone is riding the buses, please be patient. I would like again to thank everyone, because this situation is not going to slow down our efforts to move our light situation and restore the city. Affected workers who are not city employees should watch the news for updates and be prepared to go back to work tomorrow. You're not going to have time off. Be prepared. The city is working to restore the services. So again, thank you to everyone who's working in this time.
And I had the opportunity to be on the other side of this a couple of times at DMC, and I'm just got an update that the power has been restored to Receiving Hospital. So that's good news as well. With that, we'll take questions.
Mr. Mayor, handling all of the repairs, DTE is handling all of the repairs?
DTE is handling the power system. We've got DPW dealing with individual traffic controls as the traffic signals come back on. But Jerry, you guys are handling all of the power side.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Infrastructure have to do with this?
What's that?
The poor infrastructure.
The whole poor infrastructure is entirely responsible for this. So
can you elaborate on that?
So what you have is a power grid across this city that the city has not modernized in decades. And so, as I say, when I was at DMC, the Receiving Hospital power, we just got used to being ready to go to backup power at the hospital, and a number of city customers switched off because of the unreliability of the system. It would have taken a massive amount of money to repair it, and so the decision was made instead not to try to deal with the decaying system, but to allow DTE, which is already providing power to 90% of the customers in the city, to build out its own system. And their construction of the new system is underway, and as I say, over the next 4 years, it'll be 100% built.
Mr. Mayor, Council President Jones just asked people to check and watch the news media for updates. The frustration on our part is that there was no information forthcoming from the city itself in terms of where it was. We're questioning in terms of emergency preparedness, emergency response, and information flow for us in the media to be able to talk to all of our customers here in terms of where this was. Where was the city on that? And do you feel the response was appropriate under these circumstances?
You know, we had the incident in the City County building, Coleman Young Center, at 10:30 this morning when the power went down. I think that's when it went down to the great majority of the city. And by 2 o'clock, we're giving everybody a full report on what's going on. One thing that I've learned is that when you rush out with information and you don't have all the facts, you end up with somebody 3 hours later saying, "Why did you lie to me?" And so we made a decision to get all the facts in place, and I think you're going to find out that what we're telling you here is accurate. Now, should we have put out some kind of an interim statement? I think that's something we probably ought to take a look at.
In terms of just a follow-up notion, then is there not an emergency preparedness protocol that the city would follow? It's not like we haven't had this happen.
No, the Emergency Operations Center was triggered at what time?
Right after 10:30.
10:30 this morning. So the Emergency Operations Center was up and operating at 10:30 this morning, and the team was there. The question was, it is when you have to identify what is the cause of the power failure. It was a while before we knew. We knew where it started, but it took quite a bit of time to know what was the extent, and then we had to assess how fast could you bring it back. And it really wasn't until the last hour or two, I think, that people started to get a handle on the fact that this is something that we can get restored by the end of the night. So the Emergency Operations Center triggered as it should have. Should we have given you an earlier statement is something I'll take a look at. But again, I would always prefer to make sure that what we say is accurate as opposed to rushing out there.
And Mr. Mayor, to interrupt, an interim statement was released to all newsrooms. So there was an interim statement that was sent out.
At what time?
John Roach?
Just before 11 o'clock.
Okay, so would you make sure Rod's on the email list in the future? All right, thank
The
you.
statement was very vague, and all
Okay.
it said was we're working on it. I mean, that's not, for
yeah.
people looking for information, that's simply
I
insufficient.
am a guy who spent years at the county when we dealt with tragedy at the airport. I've been doing this for a long time, and I have learned that I would much rather take criticism from you for being an hour later and being accurate than spend the next 3 days correcting the statements that we made that weren't accurate. So I'll be glad to look at it, but I told the team at 12:30 that I wanted to get all the facts together to do a 2 o'clock briefing. The team worked very hard for the last 90 minutes, and you had several different departments, several different agencies, and I think to give you a thorough briefing at 2 o'clock was a reasonable timeline.
Can you talk about where we are in terms of the repair of the system, the handover to DTE, and how it relates to the getting streetlights back on?
It doesn't have anything to do with streetlights. Streetlights is a public lighting authority. It's totally separate. The streetlight program is working fine, and the streetlights that we're putting in are wired directly to DTE. This is the traffic lights, however, the red, yellow, and green traffic signals along with the other buildings. And I'll let Jerry Narcia talk about where we are in rebuilding this.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we are on a 4-year program to upgrade the system. As the mayor mentioned, it's a system that's aging and is quite old. That's not unusual for large urban centers like Detroit across the country and across the state. So we are on a program to rehabilitate the system, and what might that be? Well, new cables, new transformers, new substations. The investment is going to total approximately $200 million to connect the system to our system and also rehabilitate what will remain in operation.
Do you know yet what happened to that cable to cause it to fail?
Well, we're not certain what happened to the cable. That's something that we'll have to investigate. Certainly, I'm sure it's age-related, but once we have everybody restored, then we'll focus our efforts on investigation and looking for ways to make sure that this doesn't happen again or happen less frequently.
So the equipment is owned already by the city of Detroit, but DTE is working to take over, and so therefore DTE is now working to complete the restoration. Is that it? Because you guys will ultimately be the authority over the rebuild, if you will?
We're working hand in hand with the city on the restoration process, so we have all of our people deployed against this problem, and I think that'll help the restored customers as quickly as possible. We expect that about 70% will be restored within the next 2 hours, and the balance will be restored by the end of the day. As time progresses beyond this point, we will take over more and more of the system and continue to rehabilitate and improve the infrastructure in the city.
But that's the $200 million investment. Is that coming from DTE itself?
The investment is coming. The $200 million is an investment that DTE Energy will make in the system.
Can you discuss what it actually, what does it look like? In other words, did this cable melt? Did it explode, or something around it explode, or what might that mess look like?
All we know at this point is that the cable went to ground, which means that it grounded itself out. So it could be a break in the insulation. It could be many other circumstances that cause that cable to fail. Until we get to the cable and actually have a look at it, it's going to be difficult for us to determine what the cause is.
And this is the cable at the Warren substation?
It feeds the Warren substation from the main station. It's called the Mustersky station, where a lot of the feed for the PLD system emanates from. I'd have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at that incident to see, but it's not the same cable.
So how many previous of these incidents have we had? I know because it seems like I've covered several. I know there was one last September. So does anyone have a list of how often this has happened?
Well, cable failures are not unusual in our industry, and what you have to do is make sure that you have redundant cable systems. So what we do in our system is make sure that we have redundant cable systems so that if one cable happens to fail, and cables will fail, usually due to load conditions or soil conditions and age, those are all factors that contribute to failures. And what we do is install redundant cable systems to make sure that one fails, another cable can actually take that load, and so that we don't have a customer interruption.
Can you give us a sense of the size of the cables? Are they small, like the ones you see hanging from poles in the air?
I'm going to say that cables are anywhere from 2 to 4 inches in diameter.
And this is the seventh major widespread outage for the city since 2000. Is that correct?
I'm not sure how many outages we've had because we don't operate the system, but what I will tell you, we've made a heavy investment in creating redundancy with the school systems. That was something that the mayor and DTE worked on very closely to prioritize schools and make sure that we don't have the same number of cable failures that we had and overhead line failures that we had for schools that are feeding schools. And I'm happy to report that that's operating much better than it ever has.
What month did you start the work on the $200 million rebuild?
We started that on July 1st.
And moving forward, I think you just mentioned it there, how to prevent this in the interim as you go through this process. How do you prevent something?
Well, there's two things that we're doing. One is the physical work, which is replacing cables, replacing transformers, rebuilding substations. We're well underway with those plans. The second thing that we're doing is inspecting a lot of the equipment, so inspecting cables, inspecting breakers, and part of that process we hope to look at and remediate any sort of future problems. Now, we can't guarantee that there won't be any future problems, but certainly the inspection and then making up-to-date maintenance procedures on those breakers and cables, that will help to reduce the frequency of outages.
You did say that you had gone, or the mayor said that you'd gone to the priorities of the schools and places where you had had previous failures. Does today's failure give you pause and make you rethink that strategy?
I think one of the things we'll have to look at is this station where we had this cable failure and then the subsequent shutdown of that station, the Mistursky station, is something we're going to have to inspect thoroughly very quickly. It was a station that had not failed before, so we had gone to locations where we had very numerous failures before, had seen numerous failures, and so now we're going to accelerate that at this location.
When you take control of the accounts on this power grid?
We took control of the accounts, the customers, on July 1st.
We started that process on July 1st. That's an ongoing process that's going to be completed over the next couple of years.
Between DTE and the city, is there something that's being done at Detroit Receiving, or that is in place at Detroit Receiving? Because we're talking about lives over there, patients, equipment, etc.
Location. So in the event that the hospital generator failed, a DTE generating system would be up and running and available to supply energy to that important. We had our generators available. We did not have to deploy our generators because the hospital generators ran fine. But I'm also happy to report that the primary feed, which is power to that, has been restored and is stable.
And so, I want to understand the receiving thing, though. This is something the hospitals are well aware of. Receiving had backup power ready to go. It switched to the backup power, and the feed was restored. So this has happened at least, it must have happened 4 or 5 times while I was the CEO, and Receiving handled it smoothly.
And will the city or DTE be in charge of the traffic signals at the end of the 4 years?
I think it'll all be DTE, won't it?
Yes.
Now, were there any signs that the city was aware of in the last few days that an event like this could occur?
No.
I am aware that there were several traffic lights out throughout the city prior to that. So
There are traffic lights out in this city at a rate that drives me nuts. But it doesn't have to do with the underlying power supply most of the time. But we have a process in place where we identify those lights that are out. DPW gets them to them quickly, and we're looking at, in the future, electronic sensors that will tell us immediately. But that didn't have anything to do with what happened today.
The outage that hit the Wings game, was that over the last weekend?
You know, I don't know the answer to that.
They're not related.
Not related?
Not related.
As it relates to the fire department, what's the issue with why they didn't have generators right away? Or they don't have them available? What's the situation?
Considering the event last summer.
There are generators at approximately 14 fire stations. And there was one ladder company, Ladder 25, that lost power. But I've been part of the fire department, or at least I joined about almost 40 years ago. And at times we do lose power, but we wait a respectable amount of time to see if we actually have to activate those generators. Because in the past, POD and now DTE tends to get those the power back up within 4 to 5 hours or 6 hours to most stations. But if we see that those stations are going to be out of power for an extended period of time, I would say more than 10 hours, we will mobilize and get a generator to that station. If we don't have enough generators, we'll start moving companies over to stations where they have power.
So
Do
they
you
all
have
were
any
given
estimate on
generators
how many
today?
people had to be rescued from higher floors in buildings today? Any general estimate?
My estimate has to be around maybe 8 to 10. I don't have the exact number.
So all fire stations were given generators today? They all had
All fire stations do not have generators. No, they don't.
They were talking, the firefighters I spoke with said, we're talking about preparedness and the event last thank God it never run, because they're pulling these doors up with chains, and it takes time. So I guess what now? What's kind of the plan? So we obviously don't want this to happen again.
Well, working with DTE, the plan is for the stations that we're going to maintain to put in natural gas generators. Because with the plan of adjustment over the next 10 years, we plan to build at least 8 to 9 new stations. So for those stations that we plan to maintain, working with GSD, the natural gas generators will be put in place at those stations. But the stations that we're going to be closing down because we're going to build new stations, we're not going to have a large investment in those stations. But we do have portable generators that we can move to stations when we need them.
But at the moment, the release says there were 36 stations that were without power and you didn't have generators for all 36.
I didn't hear your question, sir.
The release says 36 fire stations were without power. You didn't have generators enough for all 36?
All 36 stations were out, and we do not have enough generators for 36 stations. No, we don't, sir.
Gary, let me see it. And I'm in charge of GSD General Services, and we're responsible for getting the generators to the fire stations. Look, I mean, what a difference a year makes. In 90 minutes, the power went out at 10:30, and by 12 o'clock, we had isolated the problem, and we're beginning to restore power. All of the fire station doors, which is important to be able to get the engines out to an emergency, can be opened manually. It doesn't take very much time to open a fire station door by pulling the chains. Certainly we don't want our men and women in a building for 10 hours or 12 hours without power, so we move generators. GSD, my department, moves generators into those stations as needed, and we are in the process of putting gas power generators that will be there on standby in the future in case they're needed.
All right, so we'll take, so you're getting a sense of the magnitude of what the plan of adjustment means and all of the infrastructure improvement we need in this city, and this is highlighting a number of efforts that are ongoing. I mean, I'll take one more question.
Did you have trouble getting out of the parking lot?
I had Ron Fleming, Chief of Security, who snapped off the wood bar. So after that, everybody got out of the parking lot. It's amazing what you learn. But the ability to get out of the parking lot, there's just been so much neglected for so long, and we got a lot to do.
Can I ask one last technical question? Normally in any electrical system, there's sort of a cascading effect. If one thing goes, then you get the fail-safes and everything cuts back. Is it because of the age of the system that it's going to take as much time as it will to get the system to go back in the other direction?
Let me try to explain it in layperson's terms, which makes Jerry really nervous when I do. But basically what's happening right now is DTE is servicing the customers largely off the old PLD crumbling infrastructure as they put in the new DTE infrastructure. And so every month that goes by, they're a little less reliant on the old system and a little more reliant on the new system. And this is a case where a part of the old system that hadn't failed before failed. The staff properly switched the power to a new circuit. The new circuit failed. At that point, there is such a fear of overloading the system that the whole thing shut down. Every month that goes by, we will be more and more on a more modern system, and the likelihood of this happening will go down, but it's part of rebuilding the city. I'll take one last question.
How old was the cable?
Any idea?
We'll get that.
More than 50 years old.
All right, thank you, saying Detroit, can't pay their bills.
Yeah, I would say that they would be uninformed, so that didn't have anything to do with that. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you.